Stop right there. Excuse me? Those files. Where did you get those files? From my chambers. I'm a judge. You're a what? A judge? Superior court? And you need to step back. Ma'am, those are official court documents. I need to see some identification right now. Fine. But I suggest you look very carefully at that ID officer, because in about 5 minutes, you're gonna wish you'd walked away. Officer Dylan Chambers had been with the Detroit Police Department for 4 years when he made a decision that would end his career and cost the city $6.3 million. He was 28 years old, young enough that he should have been cautious about his instincts, but apparently convinced that black women carrying official documents must have stolen them. One Monday morning in the lobby of the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, he saw a black woman in casual clothing carrying an armful of case files and immediately assumed she was removing them illegally. That woman was Judge Michelle Hartwell, a 41-year-old Superior Court judge who'd been on the bench for 7 years and happened to be one of the judges who reviewed police misconduct cases. What Chambers did next, demanding identification, dismissing her judicial credentials, and attempting to confiscate her files, would become a devastating example of how bias destroys careers even when the person you're targeting has the power to end yours. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these expose the truth about how racial profiling works at every level, and your support helps us keep telling them. Let's continue. A black woman in her early 42nds, Judge Michelle Hartwell, was walking through the lobby of the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice carrying a stack of case files and legal briefs. Her judicial identification badge was clipped to the waistband of her jeans, partially covered by her blazer. Her judicial robes were hanging in her chambers upstairs. No crime, no theft, no violation. Just a judge taking work home on a Monday morning before court convened. But to Officer Dylan Chambers, a young cop with 4 years on the force and a history of seeing black people as suspects, she looked like someone stealing confidential documents. The Frank Murphy Hall of Justice sits on Antoine Street in downtown Detroit. It's a massive 13-story limestone building that houses Detroit's 36th District Court, the 3rd Circuit Court, and the Recorder's Court. Built in 1970, it processes thousands of cases every year. Criminal trials, civil litigation, family court matters, probate cases. The building sees hundreds of people every day: judges, attorneys, defendants, witnesses, court staff, police officers, social workers, probation officers. The lobby is always busy during business hours, with security checkpoints, metal detectors, and a constant flow of people moving between courtrooms and offices. It was 8:45 a.m. on a Monday in early November. The morning was cold, temperatures in the low 40s. The lobby was moderately busy, people arriving for 9 a.m., dockets, attorneys checking in with clients, court staff heading to their offices. Judge Hartwell had arrived at 7:30 a.m., spent an hour in her chambers reviewing motions for that afternoon's hearings, and was now leaving to work from home until her 1 p.m. docket. She wore dark jeans, a burgundy blazer over a white blouse, and comfortable flats. Professional, but not in her judicial robes. Her arms were full of file folders, legal pads, and case law printouts. Standard for any judge taking work home. Judge Michelle Hartwell had been on the bench for 7 years. 7 years presiding over criminal cases, civil disputes, and preliminary hearings that determined whether defendants went to trial or walked free. Before that, she'd spent 12 years as an attorney, 6 years as a public defender, representing defendants who couldn't afford private counsel, and 6 years as a prosecutor in the Wayne County District Attorney's Office, handling everything from misdemeanors to homicides. She tried over 200 cases as an attorney, winning convictions on 90% of her prosecutions and securing acquittals or favorable plea deals for 75% of her defense clients. She knew the law from every angle: defense, prosecution, and now judicial review. Hartwell had earned her position through exceptional work. She'd graduated magna cum laude from Howard University with a degree in political science, then earned her JD from the University of Michigan Law School, where she'd been an editor on the Michigan Law Review. She'd clerked for a federal district judge, learning how appellate review worked and how judicial decisions shaped legal precedent. After her clerkship, She joined the public defender's office, representing clients who faced everything from drug possession to murder charges. She'd built a reputation as a fierce advocate who knew procedure better than most prosecutors. The DA's office had recruited her specifically because they wanted someone who understood defense strategy. At 41 years old, Judge Hartwell was exactly where she'd worked to be. She presided over Courtroom 6 in the Third Circuit, handling criminal cases and some civil matters. Her colleagues respected her legal mind. Attorneys praised her fairness. She had a reputation for being tough but impartial, holding both prosecutors and defense attorneys to high standards. She also had a reputation for not tolerating police misconduct. She'd thrown out evidence obtained through illegal searches. She'd sanctioned officers who lied on the stand. She dismissed cases where police violated constitutional rights. Some officers loved her commitment to proper procedure. Others resented her willingness to call out bad policing. That Monday morning, Hartwell had been working since 7:30 a.m. She had a light morning, no hearings until 1 p.m., so she decided to review case files at home where she could focus without interruptions. She'd gathered files for 3 cases, a motion to suppress evidence in a drug case, a preliminary hearing for an assault charge, and an appeal of a prior ruling on admissibility. Standard judicial work. She wore jeans because she wasn't holding court until the afternoon. Her judicial ID badge was clipped to her waistband, visible but not prominent. She looked like what she was, a judge taking files home to work. She walked through the lobby carrying her stack of files, heading toward the exit. She'd done this hundreds of times. No one had ever questioned her, but today, someone did. Officer Dylan Chambers was 28 years old. He'd been with the Detroit Police Department for 4 years, currently assigned to courthouse security detail. The detail was supposed to be straightforward: monitor security checkpoints, respond to disturbances, ensure judges and court staff stayed safe. Chambers had been on the detail for 8 months. His supervisors described him as alert and proactive, which was code for overly suspicious and quick to confront people. In 8 months on courthouse detail, Chambers had compiled 5 complaints. 5. 3 involved questioning black attorneys about whether they were really attorneys. 1 involved stopping a black court reporter and demanding to see her credentials. Another involved confronting a black social worker and accusing her of impersonating a court employee. Each complaint followed the same pattern. Chambers saw a black person in professional clothing and assumed they were lying about their role. Each complaint was investigated and closed. The department considered them misunderstandings. Training was recommended. Chambers attended. Nothing changed. He continued seeing black professionals as imposters. That Monday morning, Chambers was stationed in the lobby near the exit. At 8:44 a.m., he saw Judge Hartwell walking toward the doors carrying an armful of files. He saw a black woman in casual clothes carrying what appeared to be confidential court documents. In his mind, that was suspicious. Court staff wore business attire. Attorneys wore suits. Judges wore robes. This woman wore jeans. She must be stealing files. He stepped directly into her path. Do you think officers assigned to courthouse security should be required to memorize all judges' faces before starting their assignment? Drop your answer below. Judge Hartwell was 3 steps from the exit when a police officer suddenly blocked her path. She stopped, files balanced in her arms, and looked up at him. Stop right there. Hartwell's expression shifted from neutral to irritated. Excuse me? Those files. Where did you get those files? From my chambers. I'm a judge. Chambers' eyes narrowed. You're a what? A judge, Superior Court, and you need to step back. Hartwell's voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed in a courtroom. Ma'am, those are official court documents. I need to see some identification right now. Hartwell shifted the files to one arm and reached for her waistband where her judicial ID was clipped. Fine, but I suggest you look very carefully at that ID officer, because in about 5 minutes, you're going to wish you'd walked away. She pulled the badge and held it up. The gold judicial seal, her photo, her name, Judge Michelle Hartwell, Third Circuit Court. Chambers took it from her hand and examined it. He looked at the photo, looked at her face, looked back at the photo. This could be fake. Hartwell's patience evaporated. It's not fake. It's my judicial ID. I'm Judge Hartwell. I preside in Courtroom 6. You can verify that by walking upstairs to my chambers or by asking literally anyone who works in this building. Chambers handed the ID back but didn't move. I still need to verify these files aren't being removed improperly. I'm a judge. I'm taking case files home to review. That's my job. Do you have authorization to remove those files? This is where bias becomes impenetrable. Officer Chambers had seen a black woman carrying court documents. When she identified herself as a judge, he didn't believe her. When she showed her judicial ID, he suggested it was fake. Every piece of evidence contradicting his assumption was dismissed. He decided she was stealing documents, and nothing, not even her judicial credentials, could override that conclusion. Authorization? I'm a superior court judge. I don't need authorization to take my own case files home. What I need is for you to step aside so I can leave. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me to the security office while I verify your identity. Should officers be required to immediately verify judicial IDs through courthouse administration before detaining judges? Let me know what you think. Hartwell felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice controlled. Officer, what's your name? Chambers. Officer Chambers, I am Judge Michelle Hartwell. I have been on the bench for 7 years. I am leaving to work from home before my 1 p.m. docket. If you attempt to detain me, you will be interfering with a judicial officer in the performance of her duties. Do you understand what that means? Chambers' hand moved toward his radio. I'm calling this in. You do that. Call your supervisor. Call court administration. Call whoever you want. But do it quickly, because you're currently making the worst mistake of your career. Chambers keyed his radio. Dispatch. This is Chambers at the Hall of Justice. I need a supervisor to the main lobby. I've got a possible theft of court documents. Hartwell closed her eyes briefly, struggling to maintain composure. The lobby had quieted. People were watching. Attorneys she recognized. Court staff she saw every day. All staring at a judge being detained by a security officer. A woman in a business suit approached. Judge Hartwell? Is everything okay? Hartwell recognized her immediately. Lauren Mills, a prosecutor she'd worked with on dozens of cases. Miss Mills, Officer Chambers here believes I'm stealing court documents. Mills turned to Chambers. Officer, this is Judge Hartwell. She's a superior court judge. I've appeared in her courtroom probably 50 times. Chambers didn't look convinced. How do I know you're really a prosecutor? Mills pulled out her prosecutor's badge. Because I have identification, just like Judge Hartwell has identification. Now let her leave before this gets worse. I'm waiting for my supervisor. 2 minutes later, a sergeant arrived. Thomas McKenzie, a 16-year veteran who'd worked courthouse security for 6 years and knew every judge by sight. He walked into the lobby, saw Judge Hartwell standing with an armful of files, and Officer Chambers blocking her path, and his face went pale. Chambers, what the hell are you doing? Sarge, I stopped this woman for removing court documents without authorization. McKenzie turned to Judge Hartwell. Your Honor, I am so sorry. Officer Chambers is new to this detail. Hartwell's expression was ice. New or not, Sergeant, he stopped me. Demanded identification. Suggested my judicial ID was fake and called for backup because he thought I was stealing files. Do you understand how serious this is? Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely. Chambers, step away right now. But Sarge, I said step away. That's Judge Hartwell. She presides in courtroom 6. She's been on the bench for 7 years. Mackenzie's voice dropped. You just detained a judge. Chambers' face drained of color. Understanding finally broke through. He'd stopped a judge. A superior court judge. A judge who could destroy his career with a single complaint. Mackenzie turned back to Hartwell. Your Honor, I take full responsibility. This is completely unacceptable. Hartwell shifted the files in her arms. Sergeant McKenzie, I appreciate that, but an apology doesn't fix what just happened. Officer Chambers saw a black woman carrying files and assumed I was a criminal. He didn't believe my identification. He detained me in front of colleagues and attorneys. This is racial profiling, and it happened in a courthouse. I will be filing a formal complaint with your department and with judicial administration. Understood, Your Honor. Whatever you need to do. Hartwell looked directly at Chambers. Officer, you should know something. One of my responsibilities as a superior court judge is reviewing police misconduct cases. I decide whether officers keep their badges or lose them. I suggest you think very carefully about that over the next few weeks. She walked past him toward the exit. The lobby was silent. Everyone had watched the entire interaction. A judge, detained by courthouse security. Because she was black, should judges have the authority to immediately suspend officers who detain them without cause? Drop your answer. Within hours, the story had spread through Detroit's legal community. Not through social media this time, but through the network of attorneys, judges, and court staff who'd either witnessed the incident or heard about it from those who had. Judge Hartwell was well known and well respected. The idea that courthouse security had detained her was shocking. The Michigan Judicial Association issued a statement expressing concern. The Detroit Bar Association called for an investigation. The local NAACP demanded accountability. Officer Dylan Chambers' career imploded within days. The Detroit Police Department placed him on immediate administrative leave. An internal investigation was launched, reviewing not just this incident, but Chambers' entire 8 months on courthouse security detail. What they found was devastating. 5 complaints in 8 months, all involving black professionals, all following the same pattern. 3 black attorneys questioned about their credentials, 1 black court reporter accused of impersonation, 1 black social worker stopped and challenged, and now a superior court judge detained for carrying her own case files. The pattern was undeniable. Chambers saw black people in professional roles and refused to believe they belonged. He demanded extra proof, suggested credentials were fake, treated accomplished professionals like criminals, and the department had done nothing. Each complaint was closed with minimal investigation. Chambers was counseled, attended training, and returned to the same assignment where he continued the same behavior. Chambers released a brief statement through his union representative. I was performing my security duties as trained. I had no way of knowing she was a judge. I regret any misunderstanding. The statement revealed complete failure to understand what he'd done wrong. Judge Hartwell filed a formal complaint with the Detroit Police Department and a separate complaint with the Michigan Judicial Tenure Commission. The judicial complaint was particularly significant. Interfering with a judge in the performance of judicial duties was a serious matter. Judges had legal protections specifically designed to prevent this kind of harassment. Chambers hadn't just racially profiled someone. He'd interfered with the judicial system itself. Civil rights attorneys contacted Hartwell within 48 hours. This wasn't just racial profiling. This was an attack on judicial independence, on the authority of the court system, on the principle that judges can perform their duties without police interference. Hartwell filed a lawsuit 6 weeks later. The lawsuit named Officer Dylan Chambers, Sergeant Thomas McKenzie, for failure to properly train and supervise the Detroit Police Department and the city of Detroit. The claims were extensive: unlawful detention and false imprisonment, violation of civil rights under federal law, racial profiling and discrimination based on the assumption that black women cannot be judges, interference with judicial duties, a violation of state law protecting judicial officers, deprivation of rights under color of law, intentional infliction of emotional distress through public humiliation in the judge's workplace, and failure to train officers assigned to courthouse security to recognize judicial credentials and personnel. The lawsuit included Chambers' complete complaint history: 5 complaints in 8 months, all involving black professionals, all closed without meaningful investigation, the pattern documented across multiple incidents, all in the same location, all involving the same officer making the same assumptions, all ignored by the department. The city of Detroit's legal team reviewed the evidence. A superior court judge detained in her own courthouse. Multiple witnesses, including prosecutors and court staff, Chambers' documented pattern of challenging black professionals. The facts were catastrophic. The city's attorneys knew this case couldn't go to trial. A jury would be furious. The settlement would be enormous. They recommended immediate settlement with maximum payout. 18 months after the incident, the city settled for $6.3 million. The settlement included requirements that Detroit PD implement mandatory facial recognition training for all courthouse security officers to memorize judges and senior court staff, establish a 2-complaint threshold for removal from courthouse security assignment, require immediate verification through court administration before any detention of individuals claiming judicial or court staff credentials, and terminate Officer Dylan Chambers. Chambers was officially terminated 9 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was unambiguous. Officer Chambers detained a Superior Court judge for carrying case files, refused to accept legitimate judicial identification, and demonstrated a pattern of racially biased assumptions about black professionals. Despite 5 complaints in 8 months showing clear racial profiling, Officer Chambers showed no improvement in judgment. His employment is terminated effective immediately. Chambers' name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement career ended at 28 years old after 4 years on the force. He did not appeal the termination. He released no further statements. Should courthouse security officers face automatic termination for detaining judges? Let me know in the comments. Judge Michelle Hartwell addressed the Detroit City Council 11 months after the incident. She'd been invited to speak about judicial independence and police accountability. Her testimony was measured, precise, and devastating. I am a Superior Court judge. I have been on the bench for 7 years. Before that, I spent 12 years as an attorney, 6 as a public defender, and 6 as a prosecutor. I graduated from Howard University and the University of Michigan Law School. I have tried over 200 cases. I have presided over thousands of hearings. I have written hundreds of legal opinions. She paused, looking at each council member. And none of that mattered when Officer Chambers saw me in the courthouse lobby. He saw a black woman carrying files and decided I must be stealing them. I told him I was a judge. He didn't believe me. I showed him my judicial ID. He suggested it was fake. I offered him multiple ways to verify my identity. He refused and detained me instead. Her voice grew sharper. This didn't happen in a parking lot or a coffee shop. This happened in a courthouse, my courthouse, where I work every day, where I am a judicial officer with legal protections specifically designed to prevent this kind of interference. And it happened because Officer Chambers, like many officers, cannot imagine that black women hold positions of authority. She leaned forward. Officer Chambers had 5 complaints in 8 months. 5. All involving black professionals whose credentials he refused to accept. 3 black attorneys, 1 black court reporter, 1 black social worker. And finally, me. Each time, he saw a black person in a professional role and assumed they were lying. And each time, the department closed the complaint with maybe some training and sent him back to the same assignment. Her tone became colder. Let me be very clear about what this means. I am one of the judges who reviews police misconduct cases. I decide whether officers acted lawfully or violated constitutional rights. I determine whether evidence was obtained legally or should be suppressed. And now, an officer assigned to my courthouse detained me because he couldn't believe I was a judge. Do you understand how that undermines the entire judicial system? Do you understand how that affects my ability to trust the officers who appear in my courtroom? The council chamber was silent. Should judges who experience racial profiling by police be required to recuse themselves from cases involving those officers or departments? Drop your answer. This wasn't just about one detention. This was about a system that assigned Dylan Chambers to courthouse security despite his inability to recognize professional credentials when held by black people. His supervisors knew he'd challenged black attorneys. They'd read the complaints, they'd closed them, they'd sent him to training, and then they left him in a courthouse where he could continue making the same assumptions, asking the same questions, demanding the same extra proof from black professionals. Chambers' record told a story the Detroit Police Department refused to acknowledge. 5 complaints in 8 months, all following an identical pattern. Black professional presents credentials. Chambers questions. Authenticity. Confrontation ensues. Complaint filed. Investigation closed. Chambers continues working. The pattern screamed bias. The documentation demanded removal, but the department treated each incident as isolated, never connecting them, never acknowledging what they collectively proved. The system failed at every level. The sergeants who supervised courthouse security failed to recognize that Chambers shouldn't be in a courthouse. The lieutenants who reviewed complaints failed to see the pattern. The training officers failed to create programs that addressed the actual problem, which wasn't lack of knowledge but presence of bias. And the command staff failed to prioritize judicial independence and courthouse dignity over protecting a problem officer. Dylan Chambers' career is over. That's justice. The city paid $6.3 million. That's accountability. Detroit PD changed its courthouse security protocols. That's reform. But none of that changes what happened to Judge Hartwell. None of that erases the humiliation of being detained in her own courthouse. None of that restores what was taken. The dignity of walking through her workplace without being treated like a criminal. The respect her position demands. The basic assumption that a judge carrying case files is actually a judge. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally remove officers after 2 complaints showing a pattern instead of waiting for 5 or 8? Do courthouse security assignments finally require officers to learn every judge's face before starting the job? Do we finally acknowledge that Black professionals, even judges, are still seen as imposters in their own workplaces? Because if we don't fix the systems that kept Chambers on courthouse security through 5 complaints, if we don't address the assumptions that taught him Black women can't be judges, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next judge, the next courthouse, the next humiliation. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers who detain judges without verifying credentials through court administration face automatic termination and permanent decertification. And if you think these stories matter, if you believe the justice system itself depends on judges being able to work without police harassment, then hit that subscribe button right now. We're going to keep exposing officers who criminalize Black professionals even when those professionals outrank them. We're going to keep demanding departments fire cops after 2 complaints, not 5. We're going to keep fighting for the judges, the attorneys, the court staff, the professionals who earn their positions and deserve basic respect. This isn't just about one officer or one judge. It's about whether we're willing to accept a world where even a superior court judge isn't safe from racial profiling in her own courthouse.